Charge my laptop. Okay. Hey everyone, we don't have anyone with us yet, but we're hanging out, waiting for people to join. We're going to talk about how to write a strong SOP, personal statement for graduate school. We'll get started in just a few. If you are with us, we'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Hi, Deva. I feel like Deva's been with us past 2 weeks. Okay. As usual, guys, I'm going to play a pre-recorded presentation on the topic. And today we're really lucky because we have Kelsey here with us, who will be joining us for the Q&A. And so we'll try and cover everything we can related to the SOP, the personal statement, and anything else related to graduate school. But for right now, I'm going to go ahead and press play on this presentation. And then we will come back in about 18 minutes and we'll get into the discussion. I do remember you, Dave, of course. You've been with us for a little while. Thanks for joining again. And feel free to drop all of your questions in the chat and we'll get to them. So if you have them now, go ahead. Or if you want to wait for the presentation, that's totally fine too. So I'm going to mute myself. I'm going to turn off my camera. We're going to get into this presentation and then we'll get into the discussion. All right. Oh, hello from Nepal. For another webinar with Magoosh. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for another webinar with Magoosh. If you're joining us live or if you're watching the replay, we're going to talk about how to write a strong statement of purpose or a personal statement. And we're going to talk about the differences between those two and what a good or strong essay for graduate school should contain. So before we get started, my name is V, and I'm an admissions expert with Magoosh. I'm also a fourth-year PhD student at the University of California at Santa Barbara. For reference, my research is in ethnic studies and medical humanities. I'm also from the East Bay in California. Oh, I'm also a first-generation college and graduate student, so I'm really happy to talk about statement of purpose, personal statements, the admissions essays, because I think that is probably one of the most challenging aspects of applying. But nonetheless, it's doable, especially when you know what to expect and how to simplify the process. It's essentially meant to be an essay that'll distinguish you from other applicants. So this allows the faculty to learn about your interests, your ability to state your research goals clearly. So they need to know that you know what you're studying or what you desire to study and why. And also it will allow the committee to learn about your maturity and sophistication when it comes to the research and your relationship to it. And so that's really important for a competitive program. You know, the committee of faculty that are reviewing your essays are basically deciding if you are prepared for the PhD or graduate school and what it is that you hope to get out of it. So they are looking for students who have demonstrated that they already have some kind of focus, experience, even training if possible in the given field that they're applying to. or, why it is that you're making changes in your research and your career now. So what about your past has prepared you for this now and has provided you with a level of awareness of what the department offers you. So you won't just be speaking about yourself, you'll also be speaking about why this particular department in this program is the best option for you. And it is helpful in this essay to list faculty members who you'd like to work with. And I always say, not just list them, but, be able to say why it is that their research is impactful to you and in what capacity you would like to work with them. So whether that's methods, training, theory development, being in the field, if you collect data in the field, things like that. So personal statement then, well, that's more of an opportunity for you to provide information that can kind of help the selection know more about you. So it should be connected to the program and your research, but it's to help them kind of evaluate your preparation for a graduate study as a whole. And then it also is utilized to help them consider you for other opportunities and fellowships. So I took these two descriptors from the University of California, and often when you are applying, you may be considered for other fellowships. So that's why with these personal statements, it's really important to have a strategy about what you're including, to know why it is that that's relevant to the program or how that helps you stand out. And of course, it's really important to follow the prompts and the guidelines for both essays and to be able to respond to the prompts if they provide one, and usually. So how do you get started? The first step I would say is to know your audience and to know your story. Your audience is essentially the review committee, who you don't get to know who that review committee is, by the way, but it is known that it is faculty from the program. Now, you don't know if it's going to be faculty members that you specifically want to work with or that but it will be faculty within the program. And so you need to know that you're writing to them. And so what would they want to know about potential applicants, and what would they want to, what would indicate to them that you are prepared? And that is different for every program, right? So it depends on what type of field it is, what type of students, what type of work graduate students do there. Is it a master's program? Is it a PhD program? They need to know, to what extent are you prepared, and to what extent have you done research about what that program really is and what the outcomes of those programs, or excuse me, those degrees are. So what kind of fields do people who graduate with degrees from that program usually go into? What do you plan to do after? So these are all things that, depending on who your audience is, will be different. Very, very different. They vary so widely, and I'm able to read many essays from students that we provide feedback for, and the content and just how complex these programs are and why students are going never cease to amaze me. So make sure that you know who you're writing to so that your essay can stand out in that way. So things to include would be faculty that are there, the research that they're doing, the training that the program offers, even courses that they offer, which you can find in a course catalog. So mention this both in the personal statement and the statement of purpose. Construct your narrative. That's the next part. Is now, the focus is on you. You are the applicant. Your essay is your time to shine. So why are you applying, and why now? And what will you do with the degree after? These are three major questions that I believe every essay should answer, because it allows the review committee to know why you're interested in the program at all, why this program, and what will you do after. So what is your motivator for, getting a master's degree with it, which is very challenging and intense, or getting the PhD, which is a very long commitment and also intense. So make sure that you're answering these questions clearly in these essays. So when you get to drafting, get all of your ideas on paper however you can. Don't hesitate to be very specific. No one's going to look at your notes, be experimental, original. This is your time to shine because no one has what you offer. And that's what's so special about you. And the review committee wants to know and needs to know what about you makes you a stellar student, researcher, scholar, writer, or whatever it is that you do in your program, and why you're passionate about that. And the reason why you're passionate is unique to you. So I really encourage you to not, gloss over the specifics, because the specifics are what will make you stand out. So do this in bullet points or outlines, diagrams, do a free write, just write, for 10 minutes, just put it all on paper, and don't judge yourself or inhibit yourself from just putting it down. And this will save you time in the long run, I promise you, because you will kind of get out the things that you realize aren't really for this essay, or, aren't the best way to present yourself. And then you'll get out those things that you're like, wow, this is my story. This is what I have to say. And this is, what's personal about it for me. And you can also use that for interviews. Once you get through the application stage and receive interviews from some programs, these notes will probably be useful for you too. So then go into your first draft. The structure should be the intro, the body, the conclusion. Introduction should have your clear thesis, which is why you're applying, what is it that you intend to do, what do you study. The thesis will vary based on the program and who you are, but it should be the purpose, or it should be, if it's the personal statement, what about you do you want that review committee to know? Now, the body should include the examples that show and don't tell more, but would show the committee that you're prepared through what you've done, or the research that you have already participated in, or the experiences that have prepared you. So bring in examples that are going to show, what the thesis is stating. And then the conclusion, you should restate the thesis, restate it in a new way. And if you can, make it captivating. I see a lot of essays with a weaker conclusion, and students know that the conclusion is weak, but they just kind of don't really know how to strengthen it. My recommendation is to step away from the essay, step away from it, and then read it with fresh eyes the next day if you can, or even 2 days later if you can. And then write that conclusion after you read the intro and the body paragraphs. Now, what would you need for this essay to finish strongly? So don't overlook the conclusion. You want to finish on a strong note. Now, revisions, highly, highly recommend to seek out someone to review your work. They'll be able to see things and read things that are vague to them, but might be very clear to you. And they will help you to explain yourself a little bit better. If you can't find someone to review your work, I highly recommend you read it out loud to yourself and really listen to the way that it sounds when you read it out loud. Are those sentences too long? Are you using too much jargon and it's just not flowing? I recommend you print it out. Honestly, printing it out will kind of help you look at those typos and grammar errors a little bit differently, because our eyes get a little tired from the screen sometimes. And another tip is to read sentence by sentence and pause after each sentence and ask yourself, what is this sentence doing? What's the purpose of this sentence? What stands out about this essay? Once you're done reading the whole essay, sentence by sentence, what stood out to you? If you print it out, don't hesitate to highlight the sentences that you feel are really strong, really powerful. You might move those sentences to the top, to the intro paragraph, to captivate the reader early on. And ask yourself, what is captivating about this essay? What makes me want to know more? If I was someone who did not know me at all, would I read this essay and think, I want to know more about this student? The way that they're thinking, the way that they're presenting their ideas is captivating to me. So this is tedious, and it's kind of, reading out loud by yourself or going sentence. It can be painful sometimes, I'm not going to, but this does make the difference between a long essay and an essay that reads like it's the first draft. So to go back to what a strong essay should include, why this program? That should definitely be very easy for the committee to find in the essay. And why now? As in, I need the master's because I'm ready to go into this specific type of work. And I'm convinced about that based on my work experience and my undergraduate degrees and, the research I've been doing on the side, something like that. Or, I'm ready now after teaching 4 or 5 years. I know that I want to go into this type of work and I need the PhD to be able to do that. So demonstrate why you're deciding to go now. And then what do you plan to do in the program and also in the future? So what do you intend to get out of the program? Is there a specific type of research that institution offers, research opportunity? Are there specific grants that you're hoping to apply for so that you can conduct this type of clinical work? Do you plan to do an international dissertation? And so you're looking for, what in the program do you hope to do that really demonstrates that you're ready and that you're aware of the opportunities that are in front of you when you're ready to take advantage of them. And that just demonstrates that you're convinced that you're ready for the program now. And then what to do in the future. This goes a long way. If you're not certain exactly what you want to do not worry. Many of us are not. But if you can, state, I do have an interest in being a professor, or I am interested in working in, research development for ovarian cancer. If you do have an idea about that and you're passionate about that and that's motivating you to go to graduate school, I highly recommend that you mention it. Make all of this very easy to find. Put it in places where they're going to be looking. That's, the bottom of the intro paragraph. That's restated in the conclusion. Make your point 3 times. Restate your point. State it in the thesis. State it in the examples in the body paragraphs. State it again in the conclusion. Again, make this very easy for them to find. It's not to say that your essays are not read carefully, or that that the admissions committee is just looking for reasons not to admit you. But I will say, as someone who has applied to many fellowships and who has professors reading and reviewing fellowships and reviewing graduate essays, it is true that they read many and that these professors have very busy lives. The research that they do, their personal lives, everything. And so they are looking to find your statement, your thesis early, easy. And they're looking to know very clearly why you're applying. And it's not that they're looking for a reason not to accept you, but if they can't find a reason to accept you, then you're kind of you're leaving things for them to assume, or you're leaving it a little bit too vague, and you're basically just leaving chips on the table. You know what I mean? So do your best to make it easy for the reader to find this information. Don't bury it in the middle of the body paragraph, in a sentence that just is kind of vague, And I say this because I am this type of writer, or I was this type of writer when I was writing for fellowships, and it just kind of comes from feeling that if you are too honest or too specific, that it won't be interesting. But honestly, being honest and specific and original is what makes you stand out. So, construct a narrative that the reader wants to know more. And you know that you are on, your interest in pursuing graduate school is interesting enough. And the research that you want to do is and the work and do after you settle. And always is, 'cause, 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 ' and check out our website. We have sources for you, for example, or finding a community of students who are also applying, who can, kind of circulate some tools and resources to get through it together. And then, of course, we have expert help for your essays. So if you're at that point where you're like, I just don't know how to go from here. This is my second draft, or I just don't even know where to get started. If you have hesitations at all, we're here for you, and we would love to support you with your essays. And we will jump into the Q&A. So thanks for tuning in. I was muted. Okay, I'm going to take that off of the presentation. And there we go. And we'll jump into the Q&A. Before we do, Kelsey is joining us today. So maybe, Kelsey, you can tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I am one of the admissions experts here at Magoosh. I am currently in my first year of my PhD program, and I'm going into the field of school and educational psychology. And it's been really exciting to be in my first semester of it. So yeah, and I'm here to help and answer any questions about your writing.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, Kelsey.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here.
We used to do webinars together all the time. So this is kind of like a throwback. But let's see, I don't see any questions so far. So maybe we can talk about our statement of purpose or personal statement. Which one did you have to write, Kelsey, for your applications?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually had to write both. It kind of depended on the program. So I had some that required a personal statement, some that required a statement of purpose. And so navigating that space of like which or how do I need to write this in a way that I can hit all of the requirements that all of them have, that was definitely a challenge for sure. But it was good to be able to find like some commonalities between them. Like I definitely want to make sure I talk about this in all of my essays that I need to write. And then figuring out a way to make that kind of standard across all of them was a good strategy that I ended up using on all of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you applied to several programs at one time, which I did too. But I think I get that question a lot from students. It's like, what is supposed to be different when you're applying to multiple programs? Like, what are the parts that we can change, and what are the parts in an essay that we can kind of keep the same so we don't have to recreate the wheel? What do you think about that?
Yeah, so if you really think about it, your reason for applying is kind of going to be the same across all your essays, right? You're wanting to do the same thing mostly in each program that you're wanting to apply to. Hopefully, at least, unless you're applying to different programs completely, like different contents, then that's going to be kind of a lot for you. But if you're applying to the same program across all of these different universities, and it's pretty simple to say, this is why I want to do this. Here's my motivation. All of that's going to be the same across everything. And then the only thing that's really going to change is what you're hoping to do at that specific university. And then, of course, if you have very specific prompts that certain universities are asking you to write towards, those are going to change your responses quite a bit. But otherwise, a lot of your reasoning and your experiences and everything, that's going to be the same across all of your essays. So finding a way to just sort of write that in one way instead of 10 different ways is going to save you a lot of time in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. So I feel like you're talking about having like a strong foundation, like being very clear on why you're applying, what it is that you intend to do, if anything, at least a general understanding of your research. And then what can change in those essays is like, okay, but why this program? And I think that can be hard sometimes to figure out. I know that was really hard for me. It's like, well, what am I supposed to say about why this program? And I just know I want to be there, but getting down to the granular of like, well, actually it's this professor and it's that book that they wrote and these courses that they teach. And it's the fact that this program offers this type of training or this type of research opportunity. Those are the things that I would recommend tailoring for each program. And so that's kind of what is like in the body paragraphs. That's like the examples, the evidence that that you're prepared and that why you're selecting this program above others. And it should be, especially for graduate school, not so much about the university legacy or how prestigious the university or institution is, because they already know that, and they probably hear it a lot, but it's more so like, why the program here? Because when you're in graduate school, you're working with usually a smaller group of people and usually for longer and usually closer. So like your faculty advisor or the chair of your committee is someone you end up working with very closely. So if you can kind of pull out who those faculty members are in your essay, that goes a really long way. And I know like you had to look for the lab essentially and like the lab director and things like that. And that's pretty much who you're working with closely now, right?
Yeah, so with my program, I'm in social sciences, and not all social sciences require this, but a lot of them do, which is being a part of a research lab. And so, what I had to do as well is I had to investigate the different research labs that were happening in the university within the programs, and who was in charge of those, and the graduate students that were a part of those, so that I could also reach out to them and kind of explain how I could fit into the research that they're already doing and how my research ambitions are going to drive the lab forward and different things along those lines. So
Right.
making sure that you sort of know what you're getting into a little bit as in regards to the program that you're applying to, that is key in making sure that you write those down in your statements of purpose and personal statements.
Okay, so I'm going to link what you just said to this question that we have here. I didn't realize it was a question. I thought it was a comment, but they added the question mark. So how to write a winning scholarship essay. So the scholarship is a little different from the actual admissions essay, but they kind of have the same format too. The difference is that like the scholarship is you're applying for funds. You're applying for these funds that are from some kind of foundation, some type of research institution, something like that, that has like a mission or something that they're trying to increase or improve or drive. And you're trying to align yourself to that, what the scholarship is asking. So, but Kelsey's point was a really important one because Kelsey, in order to be able to write the essay that she wrote to be admitted into her program, she had to do some like back work. She had to contact the lab director. She had to contact several of them and ask to meet and speak. And that provided her with information that she would then put into that essay. So when you're writing for a scholarship, no, you can't necessarily reach out to the foundation and talk to them. I mean, if you could, that would be great, but usually you can't. So you need to be able to do your own like background research about how the work that you do, the research that you intend to do is going to align with the goals of that foundation. So, for example, a common one that a lot of people apply to in the humanities is the Ford Foundation. That foundation intends to diversify higher education and diversify the professoriate, so people who go into being a professor. So talking about diversity and things like that can be challenging because how do you integrate that into your research? But nonetheless, like that is the task, because when you're writing towards a scholarship, the donors who provide those funds, they want to know that that money is going towards the intentions and the motives behind that donation. So I would say for the person who asked this question is really knowing what that scholarship is asking for or what they're looking for. And also, if you can, speak to anyone that has examples who have applied to that or who have actually gotten it. You'd be surprised how many people would be interested in sharing those documents as long as you keep them private. And then, of course, the same format that I mentioned in this presentation is the drafting, the writing, the review, rereading the essay, sentence by sentence if you can, and just really asking yourself if you're answering the prompt to the best of your ability. What about you, Kelsey? Do you have any points? I know this is like a broad question, but nonetheless.
Yeah, no, you really got to make sure that you hit the goals of what they're looking for. That's you want to do kind of a backwards design, like what you were talking about. Be establish the goal and then make sure that your whole essay is targeted towards how do you fit that goal. How does your research, how does the work that you're going to do, how is that going to hit the goal and expand upon it and show application of how your research is going to impact the area that they're interested in. That's always going to be key, is always going back to your purpose for anything that you write. Always go back to your purpose.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think as far as this question too, like finding scholarships is you can kind of reverse engineer it in the sense of like knowing what your research is, what it is that you're hoping to contribute towards, and looking for scholarships that are also doing that. But if this question is about like, where do you actually even find them? Like, where do you get to them? That is, yeah, that's something that I feel like we don't get to talk about as enough in graduate school, but finding those resources are crucial, and finding them in time is super important because it takes a while to develop these applications and to get letters of recommendation. But as far as how I find scholarships, I look in the, if you're already in graduate school, I look for internal scholarships. So those are things that the university already has, like they're already working with some other donor, some other foundation. And so you can find them through your university. They usually have like kind of listserv or something like that. You might even be able to contact like a kind of like a funding advisor at your institution. I know a lot of them have them. They could be a fellow graduate student or someone else who's just going to kind of help you do the initial digging for what you qualify for. And then of course there are like external websites too. One of them is ProFellow, and that's the only one I use. Most of the fellowships, I already know which ones I qualify for, which ones I really want, and I just continue applying to them. And then I always look for internal grants at my institution too. What about you, Kelsey? You have any recommendations on this one?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I actually have not applied for scholarships because my program is fully funded, like, and then some. So I have not had that opportunity. But yeah, that I do know about ProFellow. That's a really great resource. And then internally, there are so many scholarships that don't get tapped from the universities. So there's a lot of
Mhm.
opportunity there. Talking to the admissions people, they're really helpful at letting you know kind of what's going on. Financial aid people are really great at resources as well. So just reaching out to the university itself, if you can't find any resources online, is a great strategy.
Mhm. Interesting. These questions are about scholarships. Okay. How to prepare the scholarship essay before writing. Is there any tips that will be helpful? Yeah. So, like, before you get to the writing, is what I like to do. So, okay, for context, my program is fully funded as well, but I'm looking for or something, types of training, and and so I will also to even get to the writing, it's important to gather all of the information from the place that you're submitting to. So that's the foundation, or whoever you're submitting your documents to, gather as much information as you can about them. So let's say it's an internal research institute at the university, okay? You're going to want to do as much research as you can on that institute, like what kind of research they fund, who they have funded in the past few years, how long this particular scholarship has been open, things like that. If you can even find people who have received the scholarship, if you reach out to them, I mean, I recommend it. Just let them know, hey, I'm also applying. I see that you were awarded. Do you have any recommendations? You know what I mean? I mean, it never hurts to ask, and you might get you might get like an essay review out of it, and that would be really great. But as far as before you get to the writing, make sure that you have the prompts available for you, and that you've reviewed them and that you've brainstormed before you get to the writing. So that might be like outlining or, just doing kind of like an initial simple first draft, whatever you can to get your writing prepared. And then of course, know what your narrative is. So what is it that you are, I don't want to say like pitching, like you're trying to sell something, but what is it that you're trying to convey to them about why you are the best applicant or receiver of the scholarship? Know what your narrative is before you get to the writing. Because once you know the narrative, you can experiment in different ways that you can convey that. And you might find that, oh, you know what? I wanted to start with a hook like this, but then I realized like actually that's a little distracting from the main point. So you probably go through a few versions, And then, of course, if you can get some review from those drafts, that's going to go a long way. And if you can't get that review, read it out loud to yourself. But what about you, Kelsey? What do you recommend as far as like before you even get to the writing, preparing for the statement?
Yeah, no, I echo what you would say, V. I think that was very comprehensive on that. Just make sure that you, again, you know the purpose, make sure you know the requirements, make sure you outline how that's going to look. Planning and outlining is so essential whenever you're writing these really big, important essays. Just making sure that you know what you're going to be writing and making sure you're hitting all those requirements is going to go a long way.
Mhm. Yeah, I think honestly, like prepping before the writing is kind of underrated, but it's really important. Because a lot of time, what was I doing? It's because I wasn't outlining. So, okay, let's see. Any suggestions on how many passages I should put in my SOP? Mm. By passages, do you mean like paragraphs? I wonder if you mean like sections. Um, but I would say that depends on the length of the SOP. Some ask for like 800 words and some are like 1,200 words or more. So it really depends, but I would say steer away from very long paragraphs that have more than one point. If you try to make one point and then maybe elaborate on it per paragraph, but don't put too much into one paragraph. Don't confuse the reader. You want them to be able to kind of pull out what the main point is. I would say if it's just like a standard one-page essay, probably 3 to 4. But if you do 5, that's okay. I'm not really like a fan of telling people how to structure their writing. It's more so about like if you think it's effective and if you think that you are conveying your message clearly. Yeah, it's not so much about the number as much as like what is the intention behind the 3 paragraphs or the 5 paragraphs. What about you,
And
Kelsey? You have
really,
any thoughts on that?
yeah, really make sure that you pay attention to the prompts and the requirements of your programs that you're applying for, because a lot of programs will say they only want 300 words or 500 words or 1,200 words. Some don't say that, but some say you have to cover this, 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 and this. So please make sure that you're really paying attention to what your programs are requiring for your essays, because if you're not hitting what they want, then that's going to be a real big mark against you. If it's just really open and just says like write a statement of purpose, that's a little bit more to your interpretation. So you want to be careful not to,
Mhm.
I would say don't go over like 4 pages. I think that would be just a little too excessive for just a statement of purpose. But just remember your goals, right? What you want to cover. Why do you want to go to graduate school? What do you hope to do when you're there? What are your future goals? Those kinds of things. Just make sure you cover those in the time frame or in the space that you've got.
Mhm. Right. Yeah. It's more so about like the effectiveness of what you're writing versus how much or how long. But it can be challenging, some of some of these prompts are very open-ended, so it leaves just like a lot of room for your own interpretation and your own deciding of what should be included. Um, yeah. All right.
I honestly think I hate those more, the ones that are just like write one.
Oh
I
gosh,
would
I
much
love.
rather have some structure.
I know. Yeah, absolutely. And it's yes, of course, thank you. Oh, you're welcome. So we don't always get to choose like what we're gonna get, like the program, they can change their prompt year by year. And you might just get the year where you're like, man, I really don't enjoy this prompt. But there are ways to answer prompts and questions that are, still original to your own writing format. So I do recommend, like, if you feel like you're just kind of killing your own voice in your writing, or killing your own creativity and not letting yourself really fully express what it is that you need to say, then maybe you're imposing a structure that is just not really going to demonstrate your strengths. So although these essays do kind of have like a general formula to follow, as far as like intro, body, conclusion, thesis statement, restating that thesis, that doesn't mean that it needs to be like rigid or not representative of who you are. you know. I'm always like amazed to read what students can do in just like 1,200 words. Like, wow, like I really feel like I know a lot about your story, and that's really cool what you want to study and what you want to do. So just make sure that you know that it is about you, and it is about like what your interests are, you know, your experiences, and it should speak to you or speak of you. Hmm. I wonder if they will add a follow-up comment for that one.
Are you talking about if you're applying to a master's that's different from your bachelor's? I'm assuming that's kind of what this one is about.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you mean like how to write those essays? Like how to basically address that irrelevancy? Mm,
Yeah, I think we could speak to that as this person maybe clarifies their point here. V, what do you think on that? If you're applying to something that's different from your past experience, how would you handle that in an SOP or a personal statement?
yeah. Okay, so there's probably a reason why there is a change, you know? And I think sometimes students think that that's like a really negative thing and like, oh, why didn't I know what I wanted to do with my life when I was 18? It's okay. Like you're not alone. You know, a lot of us make those changes in our field of study or, you know, the type of work we want to do. But what's important is for you to be able to articulate that path. So, you know, you started your BS in something and it still gave you valuable experience, training, and the degree is still valuable and important. And it wasn't a quote unquote waste of time, you know? So don't address it in that way. Just tell the story of how you got to that BS, what it taught you, what you gained from that, what you did with that. If you say, you know, started working in a field, an industry, and if you made a choice that you needed to change that, you know, that point where you said, actually, I'm going to do like a 90-degree turn here and I'm going to go a completely different direction. What brought you to that? And I always recommend with these essays is to speak about it almost as if it was all intentional, truly. Like the BS was, I knew I wanted to do that because this information that I gathered from this degree now prepares me for this master's in a unique way, an original way that I'm proud of. You don't have to say you're proud of it, but like that, you know, makes you prepared for this master's. And although there might be irrelevancy, it still makes you stand out as an applicant. You know, you're bringing something unique that perhaps other applicants don't have. Now, as far as preparedness, as long as you meet the requirements for the master's to apply, then you are, a candidate, and that's the important thing. And so, all you have to do now is construct a narrative that demonstrates that, you know, you had a journey as a student. There are certain things that you gained that developed you as a thinker, as a researcher, whatever that might be, and that now you're prepared to go into the master's. So think of it kind of as like constructing a story or a narrative that demonstrates the strengths that you have gathered from your experiences, not so much an essay that says, oh, there's a relevancy and, you know, I know it's irrelevant and I'm sorry. No, 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 no. You are prepared and you are a strong applicant. And now it's just kind of like demonstrating how original and prepared and unique you are and why you're a great applicant.
Yeah, everything you've done up until this point is a strength, right? Your experience, your background, what you bring to the table is a strength. Don't ever consider what you've got as a weakness. So if it makes you a qualified candidate who is going to be unique and bring something new to the table, use it as a strength.
Yeah. 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 I mean, as long as you meet the requirements to apply, then that's all you really need, you know? If you don't meet the requirements, then that's a different story because then they wouldn't be able to accept you. But yeah, it does feel like a challenging essay to write sometimes, almost because it feels like you need to explain yourself, but you're not explaining, you know, why you're different. You're demonstrating that that's like a strength that you have. Um, And that really goes for all of us too, I'd say. Essay structure for application fee waiver. Huh. Is this to the university, or is this to, like, it must be, huh? It must be like applying for a fee waiver to apply. Okay. Well, I would say if they have a prompt, responding as closely to the prompt as possible, because they might need to make sure that you qualify for the fee waiver entirely. So that's why they're asking you those questions. So I would say this one is very closely to the prompt. And then standard essay format so that it's easy to read and get that information quickly, which is like intro, body paragraphs with those strong examples, the conclusion that summarizes all of that. And then I've never written one of these as far as like why the waiver, but I would assume, and this is just my personal, I guess, opinion on this, is like, you know, going above and beyond like what they're asking of you. So if they're asking like, you know, what would you do? How would this fee waiver help you? Provide a robust amount, like a robust example in the sense of like all of the ways that it would, and being specific. Yeah, that's all I can really think of. What about you, Kelsey? How do you feel about that one?
Yeah, so just make sure that you communicate your need, right? The reason why you're applying for the fee waiver and what that would do for you, right? The specific benefit that would provide for you. I think that's going to be the best when you're writing those types of applications. Usually they do have some sort of like prompt to them of some sort. And if not, then just keep in mind communicating your need and the benefit.
Yeah. Hopefully that was helpful. Okay, this is a challenging one because, to be honest, I think most of us are not really clear about the research. I mean, we have a general idea, but we're, you know, open to changing that after taking grad courses. I think that's true for most of us. I know that some people are very specific about that project they want to do, but I think a majority of us are a little more general. But I would recommend for this to choose something. It is not very strong to say, I'm not really sure. It could be this, it could be that. I'm uncertain, just because uncertainty could communicate like, you know, perhaps not really clear on why you want the master's at all. It could communicate that. So my recommendation, and it's just my recommendation, is to choose something that you would pursue, and just choose it as if that's your only, you know, interest, and say, this is what I'm interested in, and this is why this program would support that. These are the courses I would take, or this is the faculty member I'm interested in working with. Knowing that many of us will choose our research, get into the program, and it will shift after you take grad courses. That's kind of just the natural course. But I would say for a strong essay, demonstrating that you are clear on your research goes a long way. I would not recommend saying that you intend to take grad courses and then decide, or that you're uncertain. These essays are kind of all about putting your best foot forward, and they really are like the first impression that you give. So you do want to choose what your research is basically my recommendation. Even if you know that it would change, even if you know that you have multiple research interests, and you know, you kind of just wanted to have some time in the program. The truth is most of us feel that way. But we don't put that as like our, you know, like outwardly, because it is important for the review committee to know why you're applying and what you will be doing. I hope that answers the question. What do you feel about this one, Kelsey?
Yeah, keep in mind it's not a contract, right? You don't have to stick with what you've said in your statement of purpose. If you say you want to research this, but then a couple years in you want to change it, they're usually pretty okay with that. Keep in mind too, make sure that you actually need to say something about research, because some master's programs, it's not really applicable or it's not really the focus. It's more applied experience. So if you don't need to specify a research area, maybe consider not doing that route. So really check your prompts and make sure that it's actually necessary for what you're going into to specify that.
Absolutely. That's a really good tip. Yeah, that's a really good tip. A lot of masters, you don't even really need that. But I would say that you do need to know like why you want the masters and what it's going to do for you. What do you want to do after? Like, what is the motivator? And even if that is general, that's okay. Even if you have multiple interests and you're not totally certain because the world could totally change, that's okay. But just, do your best to construct a narrative that demonstrates you're interested, you're prepared, and that you're certain that this is the program for you for this degree. Okay, if you mean will it be taken negatively if you state that you're unsure about, yes. I can't say how it will be taken because I don't know the review committee, but I would say that it is not recommended for you to use language that demonstrates uncertainty or disinterest or unpreparedness. You do not want to use any language that kind of references that. Most of the language that you're using, if not all, should kind of be towards demonstrating your interest, your preparedness, your ability to contribute, speaking of yourself as positively as you can. You don't need to like be so transparent in this essay that you demonstrate all of your insecurities and your doubts about graduate school, because we all have them. We all have them when we're applying, and it's just part. It's just part of it. But I would refrain from doing that for sure.
Yeah, there is value in just making sure that you know exactly what you're wanting to do with this degree. Just wanting to go to grad school just to go to grad school is not going to be good enough. So make sure that you actually know what you want to do in your career. Make sure you want to know how grad school is going to get you there. Unlike undergrad, where you just sort of apply to get in, graduate school, you got to be a little bit more intentional. So you've got to know why you're wanting to go, why you want to go to this program, why you're wanting to do this for a job in a career for the rest of your life. Okay. So spending some time to actually reflect on that and make sure you've got a good answer to that is going to benefit you with your applications beyond anything else.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And there's also, it's like an 80-20, like we are convinced and we are like, yeah, I'm pretty certain I could do that and that those are my interests. But just also know that most of us are also like living with uncertainty. Our research could change and, we could get out and there might be multiple career paths that we're interested in. And that's okay because we evolve and we change and we grow. But as far as for the essay, you want to do your very best to construct a strong narrative that demonstrates that you're prepared. Yeah. Okay. Those were all the questions. Oh, yeah. Hopefully that was helpful. And, always know that if you are struggling to write those essays or you'd like some support, we have that here at Magoosh. We have a student-led community for you on Discord that you can check out. And I will actually send that link right now. And we also have admissions experts to help you with your essay, like actually provide you that line-by-line feedback. And, just kind of let you know what it is that your essay is doing and where you could need a little bit more help. And we all need that support, honestly. these essays are challenging. I think that like it's probably like the most challenging part of applying is just constructing a narrative that is true to you and that can convey your interest, because we're all such complex people, you know, it's hard to simplify that. So this is our Discord. You can join in on student conversations there, sharing a bunch of resources for students who are applying like you. And we host these webinars every week at 12. Sometimes we just have live Q&A so that you can just come in with all of your questions, fire all the questions, and we'll get to as many as we can. And then sometimes we do topics like this one. And I just want to say thank you, Kelsey, for joining us. You're so helpful. It's always so nice to collaborate with you.
I know. I love it when we get to collaborate. This was fun.
Yeah. All right, everybody. I think we're going to log off and the broadcast. But be sure to check us out on Discord, check us out online. Oh, yes, of course. Unwritten rule for word limit. That's an interesting question.
So you mean if you just have like a big broad prompt, like write a statement of purpose? I'm assuming.
I'm assuming too.
No, there's not, but there is like some decorum to that. Like you don't just want to write one page because you're not going to communicate everything that you need to within that space, but you also don't want to write like 8 pages because that's just going to be way too much for them to read in the short amount of time that they have. So you just want to be kind of in that sweet spot of around 3 to 5 pages, right? Like 1,500 words ish. That's kind of where you want to be in that sweet spot.
Yeah. Yeah. I would also say like refrain from like adding length to the essay just for the sake of adding length. Sorry, more questions are coming in. That's great. So make sure that what you're writing is that it's doing something. It's responding to the prompt, or it's providing those examples for your thesis statement. As long as you know what the purpose of that page length is and what each paragraph and what it's all doing, then I'd say as long as you need it to be, but being realistic in that they're reading multiple. So I think like 3 to 5 is kind of that sweet spot. Anywhere in between there. How do I start creating StoryWorks?
Starting your essay, right? How do you start it? The intro? Yeah,
oh,
the
you mean
story can work.
Yeah,
story can work for sure. Just make sure it's intentional. Don't just like start with a random story that isn't tied to your purpose for why you're applying.
Right. I didn't understand the question at first. You mean like how do you start like the paper, the essay? Yeah. Yeah. I would recommend something that is like a hook, and we use that kind of broadly, like something that's going to hook the reader, captivate them. That could be something, very unique to you. And I do recommend it be related to you. I see students use like quotes from other people, and that's how they start the essay. And like, that's a great quote, but it kind of just distracts from you as the applicant. So if a story or a narrative works for you, then that's great. But it doesn't have to be that. If you're not a storyteller and you feel like you kind of hesitate to do that, it can just be another way to jump into an essay that's captivating. The link is invalid. Okay, give me 1 second. I will send it again. But yeah, I think, what's funny is like starting an essay can be like the hardest part. So if you find yourself just like struggling starting, then don't. Just get your thesis going and then jump into the body paragraphs. And then once you write the full essay, then you might, know what that hook should be because you already know the content of the essay. I hope that makes sense. Like it doesn't have to be, you don't have to start. How do I share Discord? Beep. There we go. Okay, got it. I didn't know these links expired. Yeah, so if you find yourself like not able to start the essay, that's okay. You can come back and find a compelling hook or that perfect first line after you write the full essay. After you do the bodies and your conclusion, then you can kind of know like, oh, this would work because I talk about this later or I bring this in later. So I say that as someone who just like fears starting essays. I really do. It's like the worst part. And usually that first line that you type up anyways, you don't end up keeping, so it happens. It's part of editing. Okay, so I think we're all set, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you next week.
Bye,
Bye,
guys.
everyone.